touches on a classic philosophical and apologetic argument regarding the character, life, and teachings of Jesus as a form of moral or historical evidence. When you ask, "Is this reasoning correct?" we cannot prove anything. You are stepping into a profound philosophical debate. The short answer is, it depends entirely on what you mean by prove. If by prove you mean absolute mathematical certainty, then you are correct. We cannot prove historical events, moral claims, or the existence of God that way. But if you mean proving beyond a reasonable doubt based on cumulative evidence, that is a different story. Let's break down why this distinction matters, and look at the different ways we prove things. 1. Absolute proof versus historical proof. In philosophy and science, we separate proofs into different categories because different subjects require different types of evidence. Type of proof. How it works. Example. Can it prove God or history? Deductive, mathematical. Yields absolute, 100% certainty. If the premises are true, the conclusion must be true. 2 + 2 = 4. No, you cannot put historical figures or God into a mathematical equation. Inductive/scientific, based on repeated observation and experimentation. Yields high probability, not absolute certainty. Testing gravity by dropping an object. No, you cannot recreate the past or put a non-physical entity in a test tube. Abductive/historical legal. Looks at the available data, testimony, and effects, then determines the best explanation for those facts. A jury deciding a court case based on eyewitnesses and forensics. Yes, this is the framework used for history, law, and religious claims. 2. The argument from credibility. The argument in the video, if you live like Jesus lived, if you teach what he taught, is usually tied to what is known as the trilemma, popularized by C.S. Lewis. It argues that if you look at the sheer moral excellence of Jesus' life and teachings, it forces a choice regarding his credibility. Liar. He knew he wasn't telling the truth, but why die for a lie that yielded no wealth or power? Lunatic. He sincerely believed he was speaking the truth but was delusional. But his teachings are widely regarded as profoundly sane, coherent, and foundational to ethics. Lord. He was exactly who he claimed to be. Is this reasoning correct? As a strict logical proof for the existence of God, no. It isn't a silver bullet that silences doubters with absolute certainty, because someone can always argue that the historical records are altered, or that a person can be a brilliant moral teacher while still being mistaken about their divinity. However, as a piece of cumulative evidence, many find it compelling. It argues that the impact, character, and consistency of a life are powerful data points that require an explanation. 3. Can we prove anything? If you push the idea that we cannot prove anything to its absolute limit, you hit a philosophical concept called skepticism. Strictly speaking, you cannot absolutely prove that you aren't living in a simulation, or that the world wasn't created 5 minutes ago with all your memories pre-installed. But living that way is impractical. Instead, human beings rely on warranted belief. We trust our senses, historical testimony, and logical consistency unless we have a good reason not to. The bottom line, if you are looking for a scientific formula or a mathematical equation that forces a 100% undeniable proof of God, you won't find it. Instead, debates about God and history operate like a court of law. One side argues that the fine-tuning of the universe, the existence of objective morality, and the historical impact of figures like Jesus constitute the best explanation for reality. The other side argues there are naturalistic explanations for those same facts. Both sides are looking at the same evidence but arriving at different verdicts. What you are touching on is one of the most famous and mind-bending ideas in all of philosophy. It's called the simulation hypothesis or radical skepticism, and you are completely right. Strictly speaking, you cannot absolutely prove that your life, your body, and the world around you are real right now. Here is what that means, and why philosophers from hundreds of years ago to modern scientists agree that absolute proof of our physical reality is technically impossible. 1. The brain in a vat and the matrix. Imagine you aren't actually sitting in a room reading this. Instead, imagine you are just a brain kept alive in a jar inside a laboratory. Scientists have plugged highly advanced wires into your brain that send electrical signals. When they shock one part, you see a computer screen. When they shock another, you feel the phone in your hand. When they send another signal, you taste your dinner. If the simulation is perfect, your experience of a simulated world would feel exactly like the real world. Because all of our knowledge about the universe comes through our 5 senses, and our senses are just electrical signals processed by the brain, you would have no way to test whether those signals are coming from a real tree or a computer program. 2. The simulation hypothesis, the AI model. In modern times, philosophers like Nick Bostrom have updated this idea using computer science. The argument goes like this. 1. Technology grows. Think about how video games looked 40 years ago, just pixels and lines, versus how realistic they look today. 2. Future AI, computers. If humanity survives for another few hundred years, we will eventually have computers powerful enough to run simulations of conscious beings, like us, with their own thoughts and artificial intelligence. 3. The odds. If there is only one real world, but potentially millions of virtual simulated worlds being run by advanced civilizations, the mathematical odds say we are much more likely to be one of the simulated avatars, rather than the original biological humans. Elon Musk and several physicists have famously noted that if technology keeps advancing, the odds that we are living in base reality, the very first real world, could be 1 in billions. 3. If we can't prove it, how do we live? This brings us back to René Descartes, a philosopher from the 1600s. He tried to doubt absolutely everything, his hands, the ground, the sky, to see if anything was completely certain. He realized he could doubt everything except one thing, the fact that he was doubting. Because he was thinking, a thinker had to exist. This is where the famous phrase comes from. I think, therefore I am. Cogito, ergo sum. So what can you actually prove? You can prove that your consciousness exists. You are experiencing something, but you cannot definitively prove that the physical world matching that experience is real. How we handle this every day, since we can't prove we aren't in a simulation, humans rely on a concept called pragmatism. We look at the data we have, fire feels hot, gravity drops things, and if we don't eat, we feel hungry. Even if it is a simulation, the rules of the simulation are consistent. Therefore, it is entirely rational to live your life as if it is 100% real, because the consequences inside the experience feel entirely real to us. Does thinking about the world as a potential simulation change how you view your daily life, or do you see it as just a fun mind game?